Hey, this is Kyle. I wanted to share with you my reclaimed workbench that I finished not too long ago and show you some of the things I incorporated from a lot of different workbench styles into this workbench so that it's not just a traditional woodworking bench but something that I can use for a variety of different functions. So stay tuned and I'll show you how I put it all together. So the beams I used were these old Douglas Fir beams that I salvaged from a brother-in-law who was going to burn them for firewood. He tore down a garage that was probably at least 100 to 120 years old, and these beams, you can see, have a nice tight grain, and they were real nice and solid inside. I was amazed at how beautiful the wood was inside once I got them planed down a little bit and got the rough exterior off there. And so they worked out pretty nicely, and I don't mind with all the nail holes and everything. Gives it a nice used look, and you could always plug them up if you needed to. There's one right there, but they're going to be filled with sawdust and everything soon anyway. I'm not interested in keeping this pretty. I'm going to be using it. Although Douglas Fir is not the hardest wood for the surface, you know, I got these beams for free, and it measures about 2 3/4 inches thick. One of the most important things I used during this process to make this bench was a neodymium magnet, believe it or not. That was really important for getting those nails out, or at least locating where they were. So I would run this across all of I actually use this now for any kind of reclaimed lumber, especially older beams where I can't really see if I got all the nails or not. And I try to pull them all out, of course, first, or you sometimes have to use a punch to get them out, vice grips, whatever it takes. And you can see here in this beam that there's definitely one more nail that I have to get out right there. So this piece is a little split at the end. This is a cutoff, but that just gives you an example of how strong that magnet is. And I would actually run that along the face also, both sides and along the face, and just try to locate any kind of pieces of metal that are still in there. One of the main designs I used in making this was Paul Seller's video series on building a workbench with just simple tools. He mostly uses his hand tools. In his video you'll see him use a drill a little bit here and there, but mostly he's using hand tools. So I tried to use pretty much a similar method for construction. I didn't strictly use hand tools to build this, but you can see I have some mortise and tenon joints for the legs on either side. See that right there, and then I have them pegged. It's kind of in the shadow there, but down below you can probably see the peg here. I have oak pegs that go through there. There's another mortise and tenon joint. And then the aprons on the side are dimensional pine I had left over from another job. Those are 2x6s. And instead of doing a tool well down the middle of the bench like Paul Sellers did in his, I decided, since the beams only were a certain length, that I could really, that they were really usable because I didn't have consistent lengths on them. I decided to put a tool well at the end of the bench, which is actually pretty convenient to store everything, especially when you have flat sheet goods that you're working on or something. You have a place to quickly get things out of the way and underneath those, and it makes it real handy. And I've been pretty good at not letting it collect a bunch of junk and it just becoming another junk drawer. I'm trying not to let that happen. So so far I like it. The bottom there is maple. That was reclaimed from an old table that I found. I planed that down, got the finish off, and that turned out pretty nice there. So I have a nice tool well with a maple on the bottom. One of the things I wanted to do when I built this bench is I wanted to make sure I could take it apart, because I don't know if I'm going to be staying in this house forever, and I want to make sure I didn't glue on the top. I wanted to be able to disassemble it and get it out through my doorway of the basement down here. So what I made sure I did was followed Paul Seller's advice and build it a lot like he did. If you watch his series, you'll see how he slides the top in, and then you screw it in from underneath. So I'll try to flip over the bench on its side so you can get a better look of how it's put together there, and how it's how it's made to be pretty sturdy and stable without any cross members going across from the legs. Right now I have it open underneath, but the idea is probably in the future I'm going to put in some drawers or shelves in there, and that'll make it even sturdier. But right now I put something in the vise and saw on it. It doesn't move at all. It's really sturdy. Okay, I was able to tilt up the bench to give you a better look at the underneath and how I put it together. On this side, I wanted to make sure that I had just the thickness of the tabletop so that I could clamp on this side very easily if I needed to. And also if I wanted to add an end vise at any time, I could do that. Okay, here's a more detailed shot of what it looks like underneath the bench. Connecting the two legs, I have what I would say is a T-shaped member with a through tenon over here on this side, and on the other side with two oak dowels going through there. At the top, the part that forms the top of the T is a piece of 2x4, and you can see that I have some screws that are screwed up into the bench to help hold them in place. You can see a little bit more detail here. What I did is I cut a rabbet in the end of the bench that fits on top of that T on either side. And over here you can see part of the detail of how the bench is able to be pretty sturdy without having any cross members at the bottom. It's this wedge design here, so I had to chisel out a spot for the legs to fit in the apron, and then I made some wedges that fit in there, and as you hammer those wedges in, and as the bench moves a little bit, those wedges get even tighter. I just made those out of 3/4 inch plywood. So far I only have 2 bench dog holes, and they're 3/4 inch, and I made some bench dogs out of some honey locusts that I cut down at my mother-in-law's house. Turns out, I didn't know much about honey locusts, but it turns out it makes really good fence posts, and what I found is it's super hard and not very easy to work with. But I made a couple mallets out of it and a couple handles, and also made these bench dogs. And I used, you can find this design online, there's a lot of videos about that, but I used, for my spring, I used leftover guitar string that I had. I used the low E guitar string, and that gave me a nice spring that was easier to work with, I found, than a coat hanger. Some videos talk about using a coat hanger. I found that wasn't flexible enough, but this gave me enough spring that when I place it in there, it gives you just enough resistance where it stays, and you can move it around and it's not going to slip and fall out, and then I can push it up from underneath the bench if I need to. And really, if you make 2, that's all you probably need at first. Make 2, drill a bunch of holes, and depending on the size of the workpiece, then you can just move the dogs around. My vise I picked up for free. Actually, it was kind of thrown in with the drill press. When I picked up the drill press, I was able to get him to throw it in for free. And that main reason was it had underneath, part of the cast iron was cracked. So I'm going to try to get underneath here and show you what I'm talking about. And right here, this part of the cast iron right here was cracked off, where this slides through. That busted off on that side, but I have it, the guide on the other side is still intact, and the screw is still fine. It's just this corner was cracked off. And I find it didn't really make too much of a difference. This has some much more play in it here, but not enough to, you know, it was free. So for now it works great. It holds everything nice and solid. This is a quick release vise, very old, I would say 80 years old at least. It's called a Litco 200, made in the USA. And this flips up to hold your workpiece. And I tried to make that as level as I could, so that you lay your piece down, you can secure it against there and against your bench dogs, which pop up here, like that, and over here on this side. And eventually what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill more of those 3/4 inch holes going across this way, and then probably down along this way. Alright, well that'll do it for this video. Thanks for watching, I appreciate it. If you have any questions or comments, please post those and I'll make sure I get back to you. Until next time, take care and have fun in the shop.